So let me start this video by saying thank you so much to everyone, because the last video got so much awesome response from you guys, and some people also commented some queries and someone had some suggestions. So the reason I'm saying thank you is because till this point I used to make content for myself, so that I can just record myself explaining things so that I can learn and I can share the knowledge. But it made me feel motivated, so that's why I'm saying thank you so much. And again, and now that people are starting to notice, uh, you can ask me questions if you have some queries, if you have some suggestions for the channel. You can do let me know in the comment section. And also, if you want me to make a video on some certain topics that you need explanation, you can that you can comment that also, and I will try to make a video on that also. All right. So yeah, and that's all I wanted to tell you. And let's start the today's video. So today we are going to revise TypeScript. But before we do that, I want to tell you something about TypeScript. Uh, See, you can make anything complex in programming world, seriously. And TypeScript not the one thing that needs to be that much complicated. This is my opinion, and the reason is very simple. When I will explain you in a moment. But see, I will explain in a while that what TypeScript is and why does it exist. So this is not going to be a long video. So there are not nothing serious thing about TypeScript. It's just type safety checking. That's it. So you don't have to like um, waste your entire weekend, or put so much efforts in TypeScript. Like I've seen guys where they put so much efforts and energy learning just TypeScript, like they want to be master of it something. But trust me, TypeScript not that serious. So hello everyone. So let's start our first question, which the interviewer might ask you about. Write some TypeScript code. They might say it. Basically, they want to know the basics. Like, do you know basics? That is what their goal is. So let's write. So we know how to write TypeScript code, right? So for example, first we will declare the variable the way we do it inside the JavaScript. First name, and let me store it Ajay. The only difference is in JavaScript, I can come here and I can do this 24 and it will still be valid. I mean, currently it's showing an error because we are in a TypeScript file, that's why. Otherwise, it's not going to show error. It will still be valid. But in TypeScript, what we can do is we can define its data type also. So for example, right now what we can do is we need to come just right after that variable, right colon, and here we type the data type of this variable, and we know first name is going to be string. So now what we actually said is that in the first name, the only value can be stored, or only the data type can be stored is string. So for example, when I try to do this first name is equal to, if I do this Vijay, you see that there's no error, right? Because it's a string. But if I do this anything else, like for example, I do 23, so it is showing an error like this. Type number is not assignable to type string. So that's what TypeScript is. Simple. We define the write a colon, and then we define the data type of that variable. Simple. Now we can define data types like const, age. I can say, then again come right after that, and you can give gap if you want, and we number, and then we are saying that in the age there should only be numbers. So yeah, that's it. There is no error. So simple. So we can extend this to object also. So for example, let's just say const user, again that colon. But now I know that in object has this curly braces, so I have to define that structure here. So I will say first name colon string, then I will say comma, then I will say age colon number, and then again I will type my object the way I definitely like by default do it. So what I'm saying is that now by doing this, what we are saying that these values should be present here. So for example, first name, let me put into the like this, and there will be only string. So I have to say this, comma, age is equal to 25, and age is key. So we know inside the key should be inside string. So yeah, now there's no error, right? Because but the problem is, it's not a problem, but it gets hectic. So you need to remember this colon, and then we have to define the exact structure that we are storing here. So for example, the first name and this age will be key will be where. So we have to define that data type here. So for example, if I go here and I add here gender, then it will show error, and it will say that gender is not present inside the main object. So we have to put gender here also. Property gender is missing in type, but required in type, first name, age name, number, any, and gender type is any. If we don't define any type of data, it will assume it to be any, and where it's like JavaScript, because in any you can store any type of data. Okay, but now you might see a problem with that approach. I mean, but if you can explain that much, the interval will be more than happy. You can go to the functions also. For example, you can define function normal, like just JavaScript function, like for example, say hello, let's remove this, just say name and log name. That's it. It is still a valid TypeScript code, but it's not the TypeScript. I mean, it's still a valid JavaScript, you know that. But in order to make it proper TypeScript code, you can say again, wherever the data is, we can define the type. That's it. That's what TypeScript is. That we define the what kind of data this is. That's it. Just type safety. This is what we are doing. All right. So the name is data. Okay. So we can define this data type also. Like we can say that it should be string, and boom, we just define this. So now when I call the say hello method, and if I pass number, it will say it will give error. So for example, if I pass this Ajay, you can see there's no red sign, and it is working perfectly fine. Okay, but as soon as I do this 23, you see the error, and the error will say argument of type number is not assignable to parameter of type string. So you can see that we kind of add the TypeScript safety. That's it. So as like if you can do that much, and if you can demonstrate to the interviewer, and he might be like, he will be more than happy. Basically, that's it. All right. So let me remove this, and let me remove these things, and let's go to the next question, which is what is type. You might have heard it, but let's try to understand. And as you can see, the problem here is that if it gets, this object is so much bigger, then we need to like, now if I have to create another object here, then I know that I have to repeat this also, but this is not what we want. So for this problem, to solve these kind of problems where we can define a structure of an object and we can reuse it, for that we use type. You can say in theoretical that. And how do we define type? Well, simple. We write the keyword type, then the name of the type, we say user, and then equal, and then in this object. And I can just copy this, and I can put here this. And all I have to do now to use this is simply, uh, let me just make it capital user. All I have to do, like make this valid, is after colon I can use this type as a placeholder. Now still this is here, but now I can just create another object and use this type. This is type. This is what type is. Simple. Now I hope you understand that. So interview will be more than happy. Now the second thing you can explain is optional parameter, optional values. Okay. So what does it mean? So for example, if I add here gender, and the gender is string. Okay. So see, it is giving me error, and it is saying gender is missing, because by default what is going on is that whatever we type we add it, and so this object will require all the properties from this type. So whatever we defined here, it will be required here. So this is useful feature, although, because so that we don't have to guess like in the object what we pass or what we don't pass. We kind of, we know that it will give a error if we don't pass all the values that we want. But what if sometimes we don't need entire like values, like some values like optional, like for example gender, it's like optional. If you pass, good. If you don't, it's not a problem. If you want to make it that like optional property, then we can do is, what we can do is go to the property whatever we want to optional, and right just after that and before the colon we can add this question mark. As soon as I do that, you can see the red mark is gone, because now it becomes optional. If you pass, it's good. If you don't, it's not a problem. All right. So that is what types is, and how to make optional parameters. Sorry, optional. Some values optional. Like you don't have to pass that. Like it's not strictly required. So that's what types is and how to make optional values. Okay. Okay, so let's move to the next question, which is interface. The interviewer might ask you like explain interface to us. So interface is also similar to that type alias that we discussed earlier, basically. But the difference is it works on like objects. Basically, you need this interface when you work with objects. Basically, interface is more of like this concept that it defines the structure of your object. Like this is what this key value pairs, the data type should be of this key is that. It defines the entire object structure. So this is why we need interface. And the way we define is very simple. We use the keyword interface. Then the name of the interface is like user, and again first name and string. That's it. So if I create another object user one, and the type should be user, then I should have this first name property equal to Aj. That's it. The next thing is I can do, what I can do is with that is I can inherit it. Like for example, if I made another interface like person for it, then I can do this extend user, and I can define here age is number. So if when I go and do this, let me just make it capital so it stays consistent. I do that, it automatically, I need to have this property like this. It inherited all the that property that I defined here. It gets inherited here into the person. So I can do this also. So now because you are not going to deal with only one interface, you can have multiple interfaces for multiple interfaces for multiple things, right? But we can extend them, inherit them, make it, they combine them basically. All right. So this is what we can do also. You can like show them with this example, and that is it about interfaces. Now I'm sure if you want to go deeper, you can go deeper and you can learn more about them in detail. But the idea is like in interview that should be more than enough, because they, in TypeScript nothing is like out of the box solution. It's just types that you are just defining the types of your data. That is it. So that it become more readable and more scalable, like for example more predictable basically. Because now I know that if I make a mistake, like for example if I'm writing this code and if I don't do this, and if I define the type of this user one should be this type, then I know I'm getting this error and property age is missing in type. So I can get this idea, okay, oh, I need to include the age property also. So this is, it is helping me. But if I didn't have this kind of thing, then I wouldn't know it until I run this project. When I run this, there will be this, for example, some kind of inconsistency in the like data type or something like that. So that doesn't happen. That's why we have this type. So now we are like explicitly deciding that this is what, if you're deciding that this object should be this type, then all these properties should be there. Now sure, again we can do this optional thing here also, like, again this way. So now if I remove this first person, it won't give us a error because it's optional property. And the way we make optional is, as I said earlier, you make the question mark sign just after the before the colon in the property name. All right, so we can do that. Let me just undo it. So that is it about interfaces, and let's talk about next question, which is enums. What is enums are? Well, let's just suppose interviewer might ask you explain enums. So your answer should be something like, let's just say in a project you need some constant values, like for example roles, or the status of something like pending, successful, or failed, whatever. Like we need this constant, right? So this is where enums can help us, and the way we make enums is we use the keyword enum and the type of enums you are making. So for example, let's just say I'm making role, and again this is how I do it. Admin, I can do this, and I can say user, something like that, and that's it. Now what I can do is, let's just say I need to store this value into the variable like const user type. I'm making this value user type. So all I have to do is I need to again use this colon and role. Now the values inside this user type will be of kind 0 or 1. I will explain you why. So for example, I can do this role dot admin or user. So let's just say I do admin. It is fine, and by default it stores from 0, like for example 0 and the 1. But what we let me just show you. If I log it, user type. So how do we run ts file? First we need to convert it into the JavaScript. So we do it tsc.typescript, and it converts into the JavaScript, and then we do this node typescript.js. I have these files. So when I did tsc slash this typescript.ts, it converted this code into JavaScript, right? So now I'm running this JavaScript code normal, like the way we do, like node slash the JavaScript file name. So you get the 0, which is representing this. But what we can do is we can assign the value here also, like something like this. So this become more readable. So now into the user type, admin will be stored. Again, I have to recompile it. tsc, I need to convert it into the JavaScript file, and then run the JavaScript. As you can see, here we got the admin. So it is more consistent, because now if I do this, instead of this, I do this something else, like I don't know, normal user. It will give us error because it will say the normal is not a assignable type to role. That is very good, because now we can only define the roles from this, and if somebody is making mistake, that will correct it. We can use that, and it becomes more consistent. So in other files, all I have to do is import this enum and just work with it, right? So yeah, that is enums, and as I said, it's helpful when we know that we need some values, some constant values, so it will become more helpful in that. So yeah, that is it about enums also. You can give them an example like that. And let's go to generic type. What are like the interviewer might ask you, explain generic type. So let's talk about the next question, which is generic types in a TypeScript. So as its name suggests, it's a generic type, meaning it could work on multiple. We could like work on multiple types of data, basically. Now let's see with an example. The interviewer might ask you something like, give me an example of generic type, or what are generic types, something like that. All right. So you can show them this example by creating this function that, and obviously you could talk about little bit about this, the what are generic means, like we want to work on different type of data with the same thing, especially in functions or class or things like that. So for example, let me give you this example, that before that what we were doing, we were defining that if I write a function and if I define the types of that function, like what kind of data this function should get as a parameter, and what type of data it should return as a value, whatever it should return, right? So it's fixed. So if I pass new data or like different data type, it will give me error, which is good. This is what we wanted, but it's not good. So because sometimes the issues come is like we want the same function to work with different data types, but we also want that that data type should be same and that type of data should be same. What do I mean by that? For example, let's just say grid. I know it's not the best example, but let's just stay with it. So what you do is you define this sign, and inside that you pass t. Now you could pass anything, but t is standard, and then you define the function like this, like this. Now what you, by defining this, what you are saying is that this grid should be getting any kind of any type of data. Now here what we will do is we will say name. Now what I will define the data type of this as t. What does it mean is that whatever the type of this function get, whatever the data type this function will get, this name should be their same type, and we can return here or don't return, like we can define the return type here or don't. So for example, currently I'm just greeting, so I'm not going to say anything. I will just simply log the values. So I will say something like hello plus name. That's it. I define my function. So what basically here we are saying is that I'm saying greet function will take type parameter which could be anything. And here what I'm saying is that it should be the same as what I passed in grid. So for example, if I pass number, so it should be number. If I passed string, it should be string. That's it. That's what exactly what I'm saying. So for example, let me call this grid, and if I pass here Ajay, it will still work. And if I pass here 26, it will still work. See, there's no red sign. Now I know this is not a great example, as I said, but you get the idea that this is what we wanted. Like, but this name is the same as whatever we passing here. It is useful in some cases because we don't want to hard uh, define the data type of some functions. Some functions are like dynamic; they can change. Like that object. Like for example, remember we used to define the type of object and that structure of that object, but sometimes some values can differ and there will be some values or not. Based on that, we are just performing some actions, some operations on that, and that function should be able to handle those. And this is how you define. You can use the generic. All right, but now you might say, you know what, we could have used any. Sure, you could have used any, but any meaning it doesn't follow the structure like that type safety feature that we have in the TypeScript. It doesn't have that. It's just like plain JavaScript. So you might just write code in JavaScript. It wouldn't be difference. But here we are just reassigning the data type. For example, where we are saying t, what we are basically saying is that for this function call, this t is put this as a string. So this is what we are doing basically. String. Like obviously I have to remove from here. This is what we are doing. This is exactly what we are doing. And for this function, I am doing number. But see, here it is hard coded. That's why it's just saying giving an error. The argument of type number is not assignable to parameter of type string. But when I do this, what I, what I'm doing is I'm dynamically, like I will dynamically define it what kind of value should be, so that I can call this function and I can perform the methods without removing the type safety feature. All right, so that is it. And also I can here define the type also as a, like sometime I will set this t, which means this function will return the same type of data also. I can also define this string. If I want hard code also I can do it, but we don't do it. Generally we follow this approach t, and if the function doesn't return anything, we just let it be that, and it will return undefined by default. We don't do anything. All right, so yeah, that's it about uh, generic type basically. So now let's move to the utility types function. Utility types in TypeScript. See, sometimes the idea of utility, like in the interview, they literally ask you, like, you know what are utility types? Explain us. They might ask you that. So you can say that sometimes utility means they are just part of built-in Java, sorry, TypeScript, and they are helping us to enhance the already type safety feature in TypeScript. What does it mean, and what do I mean by that? So basically, what I'm saying is that sometimes you define structure like this, like type user, and you will say something like this: name Ajay and age. No, I will say number. Sorry, number, and instead of Ajay, I will say string. You define that data type, and let me make the variable. Let me make a function called function say hello, and there's a function which will take user as user data type. Let me just make it capital, so it is user type. So basically what I am saying is that this function will be type of this user. So I'm saying hello, so let's say hello. I can say hello dollar user dot name, and if I call it, I have to pass this object. Here's the interesting thing: I have to pass both things as 26. So it will just print me for, let me just run this code for you. TSC, as you know already, TSC TypeScript TypeScript dot ts. We ran this 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3. We are done, and let me run the other file also. Now let me run the JavaScript file. You see, hello Ajay, because I passed this object, and this object is following. Uh, it will pass here, and it will check, okay, this object which I passed from here, whether this is follow this structures of this type, and we, as you can see, it have all the name and age key, and it's like, okay, it passed and same the data type, so it passed and it ran. But if I do this, it will give me error that this is not following. Where I will pass here, it will come here, and then it will check that whether this object that get passed as a parameter is the type of this user, which is saying that this object should have name and age key, and the data type should match. But it is not matching in this case, so it is throwing an error. So what utility does for us? Well, let me just show you. What utility does is there are some predefined utility tools. So one of them is partial, yeah, type, and I can just pass this user here. Now, as soon as I do that, you see that error has gone. Now, what partial does is it makes all the properties of this type optional. Now you might ask, why is it like useful? Because we could have just gone and make every property as optional. Yes, we could have, but that would have changed this entire type. But we don't want that. What we want is sometimes we want them to be optional, sometimes we don't. That is what utility means. It enhances the already type that define types. Okay, so I was saying that this partial will for this function. only for this function, this will make them optional. But if I write another function, and if I use this user type as a type safety checking, then it will still work, like it is make them all the required. So you can see the usefulness of these things, right? So we can just use this type also, and if you want them to be partial, like if you want in the sense like, if we pass or not pass doesn't matter in this case. In some function calls, so instead of defining the another type, or making all the property optional in here, because what if sometimes we need all them to be required, then what? Something like this, right? So for these kind of use cases, this partial type will help us. And the way we use it, we define this partial, and then we use this uh, like lesser than or greater than sign, and we define like pass the whatever the type that we want to check, make the properties to be optional. We just pass that type here, and it will make them optional. Now there is another one which is required. So for example, what if all the properties are optional? And as you can see by the name, that the required does what required does is it makes them required. So for example, if I do this, and by the way, if I do this here, it will work because it's optional, so it will not give us error, because if you are passing the name key, it will say okay, it's optional, so it doesn't matter if I'm passing entire or not. But what if in some function or some places we want those properties to be required? So again, nothing difficult. All we have to do is required required and just pass that object here. And as you can see, as soon as I did that, it gave me this error that argument type name string is not assignable to parameter type required. Age is missing in type name but required in type. You get that we need to pass that age property also. And if I do that, and if I set 26, it is working. You can see because now it's meeting all the properties. And if you want to see that how this required has been created, you can see this is how it has been created, and using the generic type, because it's not like predefined, it's generic type. So you see that that required keyword, and then this style line, and then this object type structure, where is it is just going through it is just a mechanism of loop which is going through the entire whatever the structure we pass here. If we pass can we can pass here static values like number or this kind of type structure. You get the idea, right? So there are certain values, something like this. For example, there's one more. uh, Let me comment this, let me show you here, which is pretty useful in my opinion, which is read only. Now what does it do? Let's suppose that we are defining a type of config and port, and in that I am just defining a port which is a number, and I am creating a uh, config conf, and I want the data type to be this config. And if I do this number like object, and inside that I pass this port 3000. So let me log it conf, and if I log it for you, let me just run the TypeScript first, and you will see that config will be a object which has port as 3000, nothing like sorry 300, because I passed 300 here. So you get the idea, but nothing like surprising, right? We were expecting that. But what if I do this conf dot port is equal to 400, and if I log after that conf, so you will see first it will print 3000, sorry 300, then it will print 400. Let me run this ts file again, and done, and now let me run the JS file, and you will see 300, 400, which means we are able to change it. But what if we want to make this property as like we shouldn't be able to change it? So for example, what I can do for that, we can use the utility which is read only here. And again, the way we should use is we can pass the config, and now as soon as I did that, you can see here that it is giving cannot assign to port because it is a read only property. This is so much like this is the best part of the TypeScript that I really like, is that now because this configuration related, we don't want to be changed in the like there should be a one file where we need to change, and we shouldn't be able to change these properties. And that's a good way of writing code, because now if I accidentally, even if I am accidentally doing it, I won't be able to do it. And that's a good thing. Now I can understand, oh, so I shouldn't be able to, like, I shouldn't be changing. But if I were writing code in plain JavaScript, I would be able to do it. And that is not good way to write software, because we don't even know what you are modifying it, right? So this is a good way of writing code where you can literally control the behavior of your code. Now I think this is it in the TypeScript. Now I'm sure, again, as I said in the beginning, that if you want to go deeper, you should go deeper into that. But this is more than enough if you can practice that much already. Like you just know, okay, what am I doing with this and that? Like what is it this helpful for? Then it is more than enough. Now it depends on you. If you're just watching this video, then it's not going to help. You need to practice and keep practicing it, keep building it. Build a little simple like web application using TypeScript feature, and that should be more than enough. Because once you get to this code bases who uses this React and Monster developer, then this is the kind of syntax you will see this TypeScript features. It is heavily used in Next.js and all of these things. So you will kind of understand that okay, what is going on behind the scene. So you will understand, you instead of getting intimidated by that. All right. So that's it from my side. In this video, uh, we covered hopefully not everything I know, but mostly that I think, which is quite helpful, and that if you can were able to answer them, good job. If you were not, now you know where you stand and what you should do next. So keep practicing these things, and if you have any questions or anything that you want me to make a video on, I will definitely make it. So please do comment your suggestion, or if you need any help regarding anything. And if you just want to talk about software in general, you can also comment, or you can connect me on LinkedIn also. I am there. I am also active there. So that is it, guys. uh, I will see you in the next video. And if you have any suggestion, again, you can just write them in the comment section. Otherwise, I will see you in the next video. Thank you so much.